Hi, this is my review of Crawling Under a Broken Moon, issue number 1. Crawling Under a Broken Moon is a fanzine that allows you to modify or tailor your Dungeon Crawl Classics role-playing game into a post-apocalyptic science fantasy experience. Now let's talk about the quality of the PDF. The quality is pretty good. You have these great looking old school illustrations that really communicate the theme and the style of gameplay, and you also have a very nice font. I think the font is quite appropriate for the theme and the setting, and you also have, well, everything is well explained and organized, so the quality in general is pretty good. It could have been improved with detailed bookmarks and perhaps more, a better system of turning layers on and off. It's still there, but it's quite simple. But in general, the quality is pretty good. And now let's talk about the contents of the PDF. Crawling Under a Broken Moon is about this setting where an object went between the Earth and the Moon. It just hurled between them, and everything went insane. There was this catastrophe. The very veil of time and space was ripped apart, and it was apocalypse in its purest sense. And after a few centuries, life restored itself, but in very unusual ways. Many horrifying creatures, structures, and objects that are not what they seem started to appear, and you, the players, play as these heroes or adventurers that try to survive in this broken world. You have a lot of details on how to handle this Gonzo type of role-playing game, how to maintain mystery and fear in an otherwise familiar world. So for example, let's say the player characters have entered a city, and normally we would say something like, oh, they are walking down the street and they see some broken cars over there, and you see some ruins of a building. But that would be too normal of a description, because many of the player characters have never seen such things in their lives, depending on the place they come from. Maybe they belong to sort of like a tribe. So you could describe things as the characters walk down this unfamiliar path. Everything looks so strange and alien. You have structures of glass and metal, and there are these objects that look like strange technology chariots. So you could describe things like that. And it goes into more detail about that unfamiliar way of looking at things. Because, for example, you do have some pretty crazy things like objects that are alive, that the strange energies of the object that went between the moon and the earth created some strange aberrations out of ordinary things. So you have, for example, killer mailboxes. So maybe any type of object, structure, or appliance could suddenly come alive, and this gives you a great excuse to create some modern world mimics. You know those monsters in Dungeons and Dragons? They're kind of like treasure chests, but they're actually monsters and their body is the chest, and it wants to chomp you down. So here you could have many things. Maybe the characters are kind of exploring as some sort of case or a container in a warehouse, and the container comes alive and tries to kill them. So that's pretty funny. Many things of the material presented here feels like something out of an action comedy, so that's quite nice. A very weird action comedy. You also have details on how to use super science, treat it like sorcery at times, or vice versa. Because, for example, maybe you're a party of adventurers, they are quite primitive, and they see this robot with several arms and laser cannons attached to its arms attacking the characters, and they're going to be like, oh, it's a multi-limbed golem or a walking statue of sorts that has magical wands attached to its limbs. Or maybe the party of adventurers are quite scientific, and they see some sorcerer using an amulet to summon a demon, and they think, oh, he is using some sort of strange device to create a dimensional gateway to summon aliens. So it's stuff like that. So it depends on the description and on the way the characters look at the world, depending on their background. And you have details on this repair, disarray, and dysfunction, because you're going to find many things. You're going to find weapons and devices that are not in the best conditions, and you even have a table to determine in which condition they are. Maybe you get lucky and the item is well maintained and well constructed, but maybe the item works every other Wednesday sometimes. It usually needs repair, so it all depends on your luck. There are several results. And you have a new character class, the Technologist. Now, the Technologist feels a bit like a thief or a tinkerer of sorts. At first I thought, when I first saw this character class, I thought he was going to be sort of like a caster, but he feels more on the skilled side of things, like a thief or a bard. And well, he's quite decent at close quarters combat, also when fighting at range. But he's more about manipulating, repairing, and perhaps even creating some things out of all the junk and scrap that you find while you adventure in this post-apocalyptic environment. So for example, you have the ability of jury rigging and weapon tinkering, so you can grab different weapons and try to fix them and repair them. Some of them somewhat primitive. Maybe you can find a spear, but you could also find an alien plasma rifle of sorts. So you have all the details to repair them, but you could also get some negative things. And all of the skills that this class has, the Technologist, have different tables to determine what happens when you fail. So for example, when you tinker with a weapon, maybe there's a disaster and the weapon is totaled and maybe it explodes or something, or maybe you get lucky and you get another try, you get a greater understanding of the weapon and you repair it with a bonus. So you have different details on how to repair robots, and this is quite funny. If you fail to repair this robot, maybe you think, oh, it's impossible to repair, the robot doesn't work, and you leave it there, and the robot is actually has been repaired, but he targets you as an objective of assassination, and maybe the robot stalks you from then on and tries to kill you at every opportunity. So as a tip for the players, it could be worth it to destroy all robots that you cannot repair. And then you have details on computer use, vehicle repair, and technology in general with all the different tables. You could even repair vehicles, but the vehicle could also break down. You could have maybe an oil leak, or you could have bad brakes. That would be quite catastrophic. And you have details on using alien devices, because those our devices are quite complex. You may actually only understand how to use one or two functions of the same device or weapon, but you could get lucky and understand how it works almost perfectly. And depending on your alignment, your Technologist could specialize in different things. So for example, a lawful Technologist is a lot better at computer use and general technology. A neutral Technologist is a lot better at weapon tinkering and vehicle repair. And a chaotic Technologist, also known as a mad scientist, because you have titles for different alignments, is a lot better when handling weapons and repairing robots, so you could create some killer robots. So that's pretty cool as well, even though it's risky. Every time you fight a robot or you see some sort of abandoned cyborg or whatever, or android, you could find a way to perhaps reanimate, so to speak, that potential enemy and turn it into an ally. And then you have details on weapons of the wastelands. A lot of guns. I think it's quite nice how they handle guns here, because guns in gritty games tend to be quite deadly, but here they handle a nice combination of abstraction and grittiness. So you have details on firearms and damage, and you have categorization of firearms depending on era. So for example, era 1 firearms are primitive firearms, era 2 are Western era firearms, and era 3 modern firearms, and era 4 are futuristic weaponry or perhaps alien weaponry. I forgot to mention that the land that you are having these adventures is called Umerica, and it's like the entire area from North America to South America. Everything is twisted and distorted by the strange energies, so that's quite cool. And then you have details on gunsmithing, on repairing and creating weapons and ammunition. And you have a small bestiary. You have crazy creatures such as the Sharkana. And the Sharkana is like the creation of an alien race that wasn't so lucky and pretty much disappeared from the planet, but the Sharkana are still there, hungry for meat and perhaps other things. And then you have the debris elemental. You have a lesser and a greater version of it, and it's basically like animated trash. It's like all the garbage of a city suddenly developed a mind of its own and decided to go on a killing spree. And then you have details on sentry bots, because, well, many robots were left with an objective, with a program, and they're still carrying out their orders. Hopefully they're not hostile, but let's not kid ourselves. It's going to be a killer robot or something. And all of these enemies have different tables, adding different qualities and properties. For example, the Sharkana has a reaction table. The Debris Elemental also has a table detailing special abilities. The Sentry Bot also has details on its programs and its objectives and missions. And you also have the Lobstrosity that remind me a bit of the Amigo from the stories of Lovecraft. And the Lobstrosity, they are drawn to large sources of processed wood, which is their preferred food, and attack any who would prevent them from feasting. So they are quite nice, and they have different special abilities depending on the color of their carapace. And you could also make like a stew, a Lobstrosity stew, and you could eat that, and it has an effect depending on the color of the carapace. Maybe it functions as a water-breathing potion or as a healing potion, etc. You also have details on interesting places to die. So this is kind of like a mini adventure to be placed in any post-apocalyptic setting. This is Bloom's Fashions, and it's basically like an area of a mall that has been taken over by a necromancer, and you have mannequins. And mannequins are basically corpses that the necromancer grabbed and attached pieces of plastic to them, so they're kind of like undead mannequins. And so if you enter that place, you will probably have to face the necromancer and his army of mannequins. And you have details on the possible loot that you can find there, all the areas like the shopping floor, the fitting rooms, the back office, etc. So what do I think of this magazine of Crawling Under a Broken Moon? I think this is actually pretty good. I think this is most handy not only for Dungeon Crawl Classics role-playing games or sessions. It's also going to work with many other old-school Renaissance games, and especially post-apocalyptic ones, but with science fantasy ones as well. You could also adapt it to other systems. It's quite easy, and the information is just top-notch. So I highly recommend that you get Crawling Under a Broken Moon if you're looking for a post-apocalyptic science fantasy old-school experience. You won't regret it. And there are several magazines. I will try to review them as I go into the content. So I highly recommend that you get this fanzine. It's going to not only change your game into the setting, but it's going to change the theme. It's going to turn it into an action comedy, because it's pretty funny, like a killer mailbox that's hilarious, and all the strange weapons that you're going to find and vehicles. You have some opportunities to laugh at the absurdity of decadence and post-apocalyptic times. Thanks for watching my review. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.